viesos šodien mums ir Kim van Sparrentak, kas ir Eiropas Parlamenta deputāte, ievēlēta no Nīderlandes, no GroenLinks partijas, kas ir šķiet ļoti līdzīga partija PROGRESÍVIEM. Tādā ziņā, ka viņi apvieno gan sociāldemokrātiskās, gan zaļās vērtības. Un no māja vēlēšanām Kima ir viena no jaunām deputātēm Eiropas Parlamentā. Šeit ciemojas tādēļ, kad mums ir kongress, un rīt cerams teiks ļoti iedvesmojošu runu. Bet pagaidām viņi iedvesmos mums šeit podkāstā. Un podkāstu, protams, ierakstīsim, runāsim angliski. Redzēsim, vai vēlāk būs iespēja pārtulkot, bet turpinam angļu valodā. Hello, Kim.
Hello.
Welcome to Latvia. Thank you very much for coming and for taking part in the Congress tomorrow.
Thank you.
So I introduced you in Latvian already as the member of the European Parliament and the GroenLinks party. And that's a bit of a formal education. We also know that you are very good at making jokes about hippos.
Yes,
apparently.
I am.
Bicycles, not so much maybe.
It's not, no.
It's a bit of a Dutch specialty though, so I think you're better at introducing yourself than I am, so please go ahead.
Yeah, so my name is Kim van Sparrentak. I just got elected as member of the European Parliament for GroenLinks, the Dutch Green Party. And I've been a climate activist and social justice activist for many, many years now. Been involved in many grassroots organizations, and now I'm very happy to continue this work in the European Parliament. And very happy to be here. It's my first time in Latvia.
First time in Latvia, okay. You have to try the rye bread.
All right.
And all the other things. That's the part I miss the most in Netherlands. So I'm just going to propaganda. The national alcohol, not so much.
Okay.
Not so much.
I'll stay clear.
All right. So how do you get started in political activism in the first place?
So I grew up in a pretty small town in the southwest of the Netherlands, quite a conservative area. And we had two high schools in my town, and both those high schools decided to join a school strike. It was not a school strike for the climate, as we see nowadays, but it was actually a school strike for better education. There had just been major new legislation that students had to go to school for a certain amount of hours each year, but at the same time the budgets were cut in the education system, which meant that most students actually had to just be in a classroom without having a teacher and just do homework or something. So we call them cage hours. And at some point we decided to strike and say, okay, we're not going to be caged in the classrooms without any education anymore, and we want you to stop these crazy regulations and increase the budget for education again. And because they didn't really know how to deal with young protesters in my hometown, the police came. And I think after you've seen violence from the police towards 12-year-olds, there's something in you that decides that you want to continue fighting for a more just society. And for me, what really struck me was afterwards we went very often to the city council to protest the way that they had treated us, and they were just not listening to us. They're like, why are you not at home making homework? Why are you here at the city council? And that's when I decided that I wouldn't keep my mouth shut anymore and would fight for more justice in society, and specifically for the younger generations that are not being taken serious enough.
Yeah. So against 12-year-olds, you say?
Yeah, well, it was the kids were between 12 and 17 years old, and there was also I saw this little girl being hit, still very clear in my mind. So then you're like, this is ridiculous, and that's why we decided. Afterwards, like most of the police officers have been fired because it was a big mistake, but it still happened. So
Wow. That's something I would not have expected. We always have this kind of clear progressive view of Netherlands, but you don't imagine police brutality against young people.
We also have a conservative part and a Bible Belt and everything.
Oh?
So, yeah.
Yeah, I knew about the Bible Belt, but this is still shocking a bit. So you were also around 12 years old at the time?
No, I was 17, and I guess that's also one of the reasons that I became one of the leaders of the protests afterwards. And because I wasn't afraid to speak out.
Yeah, we have a saying in the party that no initiative goes unpunished. And maybe it sounds a bit grim in the context, but it's usually about, if you assume a leadership role, you're just going to have to kind of carry it through, kind of deal with it.
Yeah. Story of my life, I guess.
Yeah. I think that happens a lot with activists, and eventually that carries you into the European Parliament.
Apparently.
Yeah. Okay. So, what are the other protests or activist things that you have done before becoming a candidate?
Well, actually, 2 years approximately after these protests at the high schools, I moved to Amsterdam to start studying, and then they decided they wanted to build a new nuclear power plant next to my hometown. And most of the talks they had, these sort of community meetings where they were talking with the public what they thought about this topic, they were during the summer. And so I was back in my hometown, and I went to a few of these meetings, and the only people I saw there were really, really old. And I found it a bit unfair that, if they were going to build a new nuclear power plant, which would maybe be running, 10, 20 years later, and young people were not actively being involved in this whole process. And then I organized a very big manifestation on the market square of my hometown. To inform young people. So we invited local bands, poets, and some other groups, and some experts, and we educated young people in this very fun kind of festival way about this nuclear power plant that they were planning to be built. And that's one of the things where I really got engaged in the more green side. And I realized that for me, justice for all generations was one of the things that drives me the most. And that's how I also became more engaged in green issues. So I started working after my studies, working for green NGOs. I worked for Friends of the Earth on air quality, for example, and the last few years as an energy campaigner.
Okay. So was the main thing that kind of attracted you to this protest, this generational gap and the feeling of not being considered as a younger person? Or is it also the green issue and the kind of ambiguous side of the nuclear power for some people?
It was definitely the combination. I was the fact that I went to these community meetings and realized there were no young people there was because I was concerned and I wanted to hear the arguments. And the main argument was, we can make a lot of money with it. And then I was not really agreeing with that, because nuclear power is one of the most expensive forms of power, at least to build them. And also the waste, we still don't know what to do with it. So I felt it was a very unjust solution, because they presented it as a solution against climate change. And it's, in my opinion, a very unjust solution against climate change, and not really a solution in any way. So that's how I got engaged.
Yeah. I've heard from some people that come from the more skeptical side of it, that they want to kind of propagate the idea that nuclear power can be a solution for it. But like you mentioned, it takes quite a long time to build and to get investments returned on this kind of power. And we just don't really have that much time for a lot of irreversible damage. Exactly.
And then next to that, the whole energy transition is already going, and it's going really, really fast. The different innovations you see in renewable energy are skyrocketing, whereas they're still trying to build a new nuclear power plant in France and also in Finland, and I mean they're not even getting it done. So I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding about nuclear power, also that it doesn't emit CO2. That's also not true. And also the amount of water it's, for example, you need to get the uranium out of the mines. There's so many horrible environmental issues related to it that you can't call it a sustainable form of energy at all. Next to that, I 100% believe that if we're going for a more sustainable society, we can go for a more equal society. And this means that, for example, when you're talking about the energy transition, you're talking about decentralized energy. You know, like if we have renewable energy, it will mean that communities can actually produce their own energy, and that instead of putting all their money to get energy towards some big multinational corporation that has their headquarters somewhere you don't know, you can actually keep the value in your own community, and you can actually thrive as a community without having the external environmental effects. So I think it's only a win-win situation if we go for this kind of more social leftist energy transition.
So that kind of almost sounds like a perfect issue. It combines the environmental aspects and the social democratic ones.
Yes, exactly. And this is actually also what I focused almost everything on in my studies. And my master thesis was about the effects of green projects on deprived neighborhoods in the Netherlands. So how can we actually make a neighborhood more sustainable, and making sure that the people who need it the most will actually thrive from these transitions. And this is actually what has brought me also to GroenLinks, which means green left. You know, like improving society by making it more sustainable.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a bit. Perhaps not too many people are familiar with the GroenLinks party in here, but you're not really that old as a party as well, I would say.
No, we're 30 years old, I think.
Yeah, and for some in politics, that's a lot. For others, not so much. I think we have around 2 years as a party, so teach us your secrets, please.
Well, secrets. I don't know if they're secrets. I think we're pretty open, and I think that's one of our secrets. If you want to put it that way, we're a very open and democratic party, transparent. We are also a party that is we're pretty strong in engaging a lot of people. You know, you don't have to be a member to be engaged in our party. You can come to an event that we organize and give input on what you think on how society could be better without having to become a member, which for some people is a bit of a bigger threshold. And that means that we're actually more of a movement than a party, where it's sort of a combination of a party and a movement. And I think that's something that makes us very strong. And I also think that because of this sort of movement way of doing politics, we can actually use all the enthusiasm that there is in society for our party. Because, you know, like when you think about like, I want to be involved in politics, then you think of the party leaders or the politicians that are the people that like to be on a stage and give amazing speeches, for example. But if those people, like, for example, me, don't have someone who can actually help them prepare their speeches with doing extensive research, or people that are just really good at organizing the event where we can do our speeches, then we're nothing. So what the beautiful thing about being this kind of movement party is that we can actually have everyone play their perfect role within the movement. And I think that's works really well for us and creates a beautiful group of very mixed people. And that also means that you don't only have the alpha males together, which can create more friction sometimes.
Yeah, well, everyone can do their part, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah, we also try to sort of have the same philosophy around here.
Cool. Yeah, I heard you have a lot of volunteers as well for your campaign.
Yeah, we do. We only have one paid employee, for example, from the recent parliament election where we got some national financing. And I mean, our party leader, like the ex-party leader, I think he basically did the whole thing, like leading the party for around 2 years, out of his own pocket.
Yeah.
So, I would like to think that this kind of a sacrifice is rather needed in politics, where there's so much money involved from interests that don't always align with those of the people.
Yeah, I mean, I became a member of the Young Greens in 2008, and this is the first time I get paid for being involved after being very heavily involved for 11 years.
Yeah.
So, and I think everything I learned in those 11 years I can use now in my work, and that's extremely valuable.
Yeah. So you earned the place. You're not just a familiar face like we sometimes see in the, in the parliamentary campaigns. Okay, so about the party itself, how was the recent election for you?
We won. So that's really, really nice. I mean, we joined the Green Wave. I don't know if you have the frame of the Green Wave so much here, but in many countries, the Greens won more than expected. And that's why also within the European Parliament, we went from 50 to 75 seats, which is a huge increase, and also makes us the 4th biggest group now in the European Parliament, which is really exciting. And in the Netherlands, we now have 3 seats, and we used to have 2. We were hoping for more. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But for the last years, we've been winning and increasing the percentage that we got in the elections, and we're staying strong. So that's really nice.
Yeah. So the green issues are becoming a lot more relevant to a lot of people.
Yes, definitely. You see that especially just climate is becoming such a huge topic everywhere, but also in the Netherlands. And the Netherlands is not the kind of society that goes out to protest very often. It's not really in our DNA to go out to protest. We also don't really celebrate the 1st of May, for example, which is a thing everywhere.
Yeah.
And so when in the beginning of this year, we had a climate march, and it was the worst day ever, because there were like storms and rain, and it was really, really cold. But there were still 40,000 people on the streets in Amsterdam to protest for the climate. That was like the biggest protest since the 80s. So I think that we're getting there.
That's
with
quite
the
an
green
impressive
issues.
number.
Yes, and believe me, it was horrible weather.
Oh yeah, I'm rather familiar with the Dutch weather, and I'm having flashbacks right now to
the
how
Dutch
it goes.
weather, winter storm, wind, rain. Yeah. I think like we started off on a square, and many people made these beautiful signs on cardboard, and I think hardly any of the cardboard survived like getting off the square. Also because it took so long, because we were that many people, but also because they were just all soaked.
Yeah, that's a pro tip, trying to make a weatherproof sign for these activism events.
Yes.
But the climate change, it seems a rather relevant issue for people in the Netherlands, because also of your geographic position, because of so much of the country being below the sea level.
Yes, definitely.
And I kind of want to think about how we can like relate our two countries, because I also believe it's a very important issue. It should be an important issue in Latvia. We didn't quite have the green wave, I would say, because then we would also have a member of the European Parliament from our party, I would say. So how do we get the message across better, perhaps, that the climate change is relevant? It's just a matter of national security, and not some obscure, abstract thing that's coming eventually.
Yeah, I think before making people aware of the fact that it's a thing of national security, you have to actually start even closer to home. I think that the way to convince people that are really not engaged in environmental issues, or are even just worried about making sure that their kids have enough food, it's not by explaining that there's climate change. It's by explaining that you can maybe save money if you have a more insulated house, and by that reducing your energy consumption, But also, if you're just talking about communities, for example, talking about air pollution, something that is extremely high in almost every city in Europe, and actually means that the healthcare system is much more overburdened than it should be. And it's just because we don't have a sustainable form of transport. And it's a bit this thing, like people actually, maybe some people want cars, but people actually just want to get from A to B in a convenient way.
Yeah.
So if we transform society in a way that can actually make life better for everyone, and then it also becomes more sustainable, I think that is a first step to talking about climate change with people. I mean, talking about national security, I guess you have water here, so you can also have some issues.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it's harder because it's like, it's a matter of national security, so the government will take care of it or something. That kind of approach. And that's what we see in the Netherlands a lot, because we're known for being really good at water management.
Oh, yeah.
So if, tell a Dutch person that the sea levels are rising, and that's how I think most people outside the Netherlands are very worried for us, but inside the Netherlands we're like, but we're good at this.
Yeah, you're just going to get more land, you're going to reclaim it.
And we're just going to heighten our dikes until 20, 30, 40 meters, and then we're sort of have this weird kind of walled country, but the sea will be out and we'll be fine. And I think it's also a very big misconception.
Is that a decent solution?
No, actually, they just released some reports that actually it was the headline. There is a limit to how high you can make your dikes. No, it's not going to work. And actually, the province where I'm from, which is the one that's most below sea level, actually, there's also a report that says if we have to choose, that's the one that we're going to put underwater, which is a bit sad.
That would be. It's kind of interesting to talk about building a wall from a leftist perspective. But I remember...
I'm really for preventing to having to build any walls, and especially also ones because of climate change.
Yeah, let's rather do the sustainable climate action. And so.
Yeah, let's just not...
Yeah. It's a very prophylactic move for the society anyway. Like you said, it helps with the health, it helps with transportation and expenses in general.
Yeah, and I think that as soon as the climate discussion gets hijacked by people that don't want change, it's always about how much it's going to cost. And it's too expensive and people are going to suffer. But that's the case if we continue the way where we are going. If we continue to say, we now need a green transition, which is what the new European Commission is saying. We need a new Green Deal, and then we're going to have a green transition. But if that green transition is in the same way that has always been, this means that we will give a lot of money to polluting companies to maybe do some research and innovation and change some things and all. But it's not going to the people that actually are going to have to change jobs because their jobs won't be needed anymore. It's always going to the people who can maybe actually afford not making as much money as they do right now. So if we don't ensure that the green transition will be a just and a social transition, then nothing's going to really change because it's going to be too slow and people are not going to be engaged.
Yeah. So you always have to temper the solutions with a kind of a socially responsible tactic.
I think so, and also, always, and also, I don't understand why this is not a common concept, because one of the things that you see is stopping climate action is that we're now at a point where, in many countries, most political parties are at least acknowledging that there is something going on with the climate, and there's a sort of agreement, but not on what we have to do about it. How are we going to stop climate change? And this is now what this is also what fossil fuel lobbies are trying to do. Sort of creating a division on the solutions. But for me, the solutions should always be the ones that benefit the people that need it the most. And I think that's such a logical way forward, but apparently it's really hard for many more conservative parties to understand.
We got a bit of this in our European campaign as well, that a lot of people they're now paying lip service to the idea of climate change, right? That we have to take action. But then you look at their votes, like the votes in the European Parliament, and they're basically voting in the way where the fossil fuel energy lobby would want them to vote.
Yep.
You know, they're against sanctions or limitations and similar things. So, yeah, you have to look at what people do rather than just what they talk about.
Yes, yeah, and also, I think it also brings, for parties like ours, it brings a new challenge, because how are we going to show that? Because there's this status quo now, like, oh yeah, of course, climate change is important. How are we going to move forward now that has become a political status quo? And how are we going to show that, okay, you find climate change important, okay, but we say it's a climate emergency and we have to act now and fast and socially responsible, and also how are we, and then it's even easier for the fossil fuel lobbies, I feel sometimes, to play us, out, because sometimes you have this broad coalition, you need this broad coalition. And then it's like, oh yeah, no, but they want to go too fast and in a way that's gonna harm the economy and then you have this problem again.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are a bit skeptical, and they remain so because it's hard for them to imagine the abstract issue that's coming in a decade or more when they don't have full assurance and safety and healthcare in their lives already.
Yep.
So that's one of the things we hear a lot about in Latvia, that it relates to the distrust in politicians in general, because there are a lot of systems that are just broken and need changes and reforms in it. And we also have this a lot in the recent election. For example, I think the voter activity was just around 33%. Mm-hmm. And it's always pretty low for a European election, but it should be higher than that, clearly.
Yeah.
And people always say, like, they don't understand what the European Parliament does for them, and how can the Parliament become more relevant for them? How can it help them better?
Well, I think it goes two ways, because it's also sometimes when people get sucked up into the European Parliament bubble, they're very bad at explaining what they're actually doing. Something that I hope won't happen to me. Mm-hmm. But actually there are many things that we do that affect your daily life. For example, I'm in the Committee for Consumer Protection. It means that this is a committee that's in charge of making sure that the products in your house are safe. But it's also a lot about digital issues. For example, about making sure that Facebook just can't get all your data and sell it to anyone without you knowing that there's a fair competition. That web shops, when you want to order something, they can't use just an algorithm when they know that you're interested in bicycles that make the bicycles twice as expensive. All these kind of things. This is something that the European Parliament does because we are in charge of digital services. But then also, for example, the Working Time Directive is something that the European Parliament has done, because we have an internal market, and the internal market is something that sometimes people think that's the only value of the European Union. But one thing that is missing in this internal market is that, we have a free flow of goods now and products. And then that also means that people can work in different countries, but their labor rights are not ensured in many other countries. And this is something that the European Parliament is working on a lot. And for example, the Working Time Directive is something that now in every country in the European Union, people are not allowed to work more than a certain amount of hours. And also being on call, for example, doesn't count anymore. And these have very big impacts in people's daily lives and in people's quality of life that are actually done by the European Parliament.
Okay. So I would say that's a good solution to a lot of problems, a lot of middle-class problems especially. But is there something that can be done for the more demoralized sort of a voter, like the one that is living below the poverty line? Perhaps something akin to federalization or more cohesion?
Well, I think one thing that that we're working on a lot, at least it's something that we as Greens try to do a lot, is making sure that services are being protected, that they don't become more expensive. This, when you're talking about water, for example, if it was up to some people that are really these, internal market, free market propaganda people, it would all be liberalized, which means that actually, they can just choose their own prices for water, whereas it's a basic right. So this is something that we're working on a lot, ensuring that this is not happening and that local communities can actually choose their own services. Same is the case for example, in the Netherlands, we have a very difficult case with public procurement. This is the case for healthcare now as well. And since our local governments are in charge of healthcare and buying healthcare, they now have to do that through public procurement, which means that it's all about market competition now and not about quality of the care anymore. And it's ridiculous because this creates a society in which the work of a nurse is, valued by how many patients they can visit in an hour rather than the quality of their care. And I think this is something that is very important to also see that one of the things that the European Parliament does is really protecting services and making sure that the crazy propaganda of big multinationals that want everything liberalized, that we make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, so it's an important balancing force as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, water is kind of a pretty good necessity.
Yeah, you'd say. Or housing, for example. There's also some initiatives that want to, they say that social housing from a certain amount of rent a month is state support and should be forbidden, which, I don't really understand how that can harm the internal market when it's a house and you can't really move it over the border.
No.
So these kind of things are things we're really working on really hard to make sure that...
Well, if the houses won't move, the people will. And it's also quite a problem that we've had, a lot of drain on the people going away. And we're hoping to equalize it someday. Yeah. But I think we're going to need your help on that.
I'm on it. I just started. Give me some years, but I'm on it.
All right. So what is something that you're currently working on? You mentioned the Committee for Consumer Protection.
Yes. So one of the files that I'm going to be working on, is about collective redress. And this is a very difficult term for people being able to sue a company that has done something wrong together. The law proposal was actually proposed after Dieselgate, where Volkswagen mingled with the computers, so it seemed that their cars were much cleaner than they were, and then this happened for the whole of the European Union because there's one standard, and then it's actually not a possibility now for consumers to all stand together and say, okay, we're going to do a lawsuit now on a European level, and get actually some return from the damage that's done to us. And that's one of the files I'm working on now, to make sure that consumers stand much stronger against big corporations when they've done something wrong. So it will also count, for example, for financial assets. During the crisis, many people lost all their money because of the banks that fell down, and this would be a way for consumers to stick together and make sure that they can actually get some money back. Because if you have to be on your own fighting a big corporation, then it's gonna cost you a lot of stress, a lot of money, and a lot of time, and you don't want to spend all that just to get your rights.
It takes a very special person to kind of go against the wave.
Yes.
And do that. So it's about making group lawsuits more accessible.
Yes.
As I understand.
Yes.
Okay. And what's the mechanism for that?
So yeah, it's called collective redress. So that means actually they want to use the Dutch example, and this means that if you can go to sort of a union that protects consumer rights, and they will do the lawsuit, and then there is an opt-out form. So everyone that has been got involved in a problem, they will be reimbursed if that's the case. And if they don't want to, then they can opt out. But in principle, everyone will be covered through this system.
Okay, so it sounds to me a bit like an ombudsman position, except not maybe for social or discrimination issues, but consumer issues.
Yes, and then someone with a bit more power, because they can actually charge a corporation with giving money back or something.
Yeah,
with a fine or
Well, there have been some impressive cases against tech giants like Google and Facebook, so
exactly
that's one thing to do. Yeah. All right, so feels a bit better to have a kind of a guardian in that. But one more thing about the European Parliament and the guardians. So maybe you have met or gotten to know any of the Latvian representatives yet?
Not really,
we sent 8
actually.
people there. Okay, not really.
No, but I am going to meet your commissioner designate, because he's going to work on the economy that works for people, and or is supposed to. And I'm going to be part of the hearing.
Okay.
Ask some questions on how he's actually going to make economy for the people and not economy for the people that work for very big multinationals.
Is that Valdis? The person?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he has an interesting reputation here because people see him as rather reliable, but also there's a lot of accusations of him being kind of partially responsible, at least, for this so-called Latvian success story when the crisis hit us tremendously hard and so many people left. So it's interesting to see how they want to portray this economy for the people story.
Yeah, I'm also very curious.
Yeah. You will let us know, right?
Yes, of course.
Okay. But our other stars you have not met yet.
Unfortunately.
Okay.
There are a lot of people in that building. And that building itself is really, really big. I get lost still very often. So it's very easy to not meet many people yet.
Yeah, well, according to some Latvian anecdotes and reputations, you might not meet them even 4 years later or 5 years later.
Oh, because they might not show up?
People sometimes like to be absent in their duties and priorities.
Oh, yeah. But if they don't put a signature, they won't get any money.
Oh, okay, then at least...
Maybe you should tell them that, then they might at least join some meetings.
That's a good reminder. Please, to the Latvian members of the European Parliament, remember to show up to meetings.
Otherwise, you don't get money.
Yeah. And
At least show up.
please don't vote for the fossil fuel lobbies.
No,
and
just
stuff.
vote along with the Greens.
Yeah. Good tips. Okay, speaking of tips, I kind of wanted to ask as well. If we think of a politician, we sometimes think of this, graying-haired guy in a suit with a tie.
Most of them are.
Yeah, but you are not.
No.
So it's a bit different. So how is it? How do you become successful when you're not a guy in a suit? When you're a young woman, for example?
I think one of the things that's very important is to not think you can do everything on your own. To have a strong network around you that believes in you. And if people are telling you you're just a young woman, which is apparently already an insult in our society, that they can reinforce you and tell you, like, yes, you are a young woman and you're awesome. So that's first of all. And one of the things I think is very important is that, just because it's an old dude in a suit doesn't mean anything. And I think I am very lucky that I wasn't born with the gene of really looking up to people with a high status. So it's very difficult for me to get blown away by someone who is really important or has a high position in society.
Even if it's a really expensive suit and like a big tie.
Yeah, I don't think I even see it, to be honest. But yeah, maybe.
Maybe the people of European Parliament need more money.
Yeah, I maybe, yeah, I don't really have an eye for that, I'm afraid. I think I'm usually look up to, like, the person I look up to a lot now within our green group is Kira, and she's a 21-year-old MEP from Denmark. Wow. And she's the coordinator of the employment working group, and she's doing an amazing job already. And that's someone I really look up to already. So I think my kind of reference for people to look up to is a bit different than for most people. But coming back to the old dudes in suits, I saw today a picture of the, the new proposed European Commission. And it didn't look like a typical political photo to me. Because on the picture it was half men, half women. And I mean, there's a lot of comments to make on the proposals for the new European Commission and about the people that they put forward for it. But just to see this picture and seeing a 50-50 balance and not realizing immediately, despite sort of the setting and the European flag waving in the background, not immediately realizing that it was a official political photo, I think that, it did something to me. And I think, me being a young woman in politics and especially in the Green Group, we are a lot of young people in general. And changing this image is something really important. I think that, the last few years, for a long time, I didn't think I was a politician. Yeah. Because the image that I had of a politician was also someone, who, like a dude in a suit, of course, but also a woman who likes to dress in a bit poshy and wears heels and, I don't know, wears pearls or something. And I wouldn't...
a permanent haircut.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not something I feel comfortable with, really. And then, like, in the last few years, you've seen many more, like, younger women, like, rocking politics. Yeah. And that's how I also felt empowered. Like, okay, if, like, those are people that look like me and they're rocking politics, then I can also rock politics.
Yeah, because I get a feeling a lot of us kind of decide that, okay, there is no party that kind of relates to me or that I can relate to. So, I kind of want to start my own. I think Agnes is one of our people that has said that. But yeah, I think we have to change the image of what a politician is and is supposed to be. Yeah. And that's why I will ask you at the end to tell the great hippo joke.
Oh, definitely.
But that's only at the end. Only at the end, Jans, you'll have to hold on a bit. Yeah. I have definitely seen it's great to have so many young women also take part in politics and so many young people in general. And oftentimes we also see a lot of flashback that, you get criticized not really for what your position is, but they're just kind of trying to discredit you. And like we've seen examples of that with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, right? And Greta Thunberg now as well. And it's just ridiculous to try to go after someone's college video where they're happy and dancing, or the fact that they have actually worked before in their life in a kind of standard job. So, I don't know. Have you experienced that as well?
Yeah, I think that by now I really got over this thing where, like people dismissing me just for being young, inexperienced, a woman, not understanding things, I worked in the energy sector. I heard every day that I was just a dumb young girl that didn't understand how the world worked. So I guess you just, get a thicker skin and you get used to these kind of comments in a way and know how to just let it drip off you. And I also think that, also like AOC, she's really good at also just, making fun of these kind of comments, and I'm so far didn't get that many comments yet, luckily, in this position. But the few ones I got, I just laughed about them really hard with my team. And
yeah, it seems people haven't found the formula that, gets to her, because usually they try to go after and they end up kind of shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, I think it also I'm also from quite a grassroots background, which means that there's a lot of people backing me up and a lot of people that are really happy I'm in that position. And I got a lot of preferential votes, and that's because they wanted someone different and they wanted me to represent their community. So, and I think that's also something that, I know how many people are behind me. That really helps when there's this one troll on Twitter just saying that I look weird or not fit for politics or that I should wear more proper shoes like heels.
So you also have a squad.
I have if all those people that have told me how happy they are that I'm in the parliament, then I have an awesome squad. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and I also forgot to mention before, but that's a good reminder that you got these preferential votes.
Yes.
So what was the number that you started from in the
I was
list?
number 7 on the list,
7.
and I jumped 4 spots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's impressive. Any tips on that? Any tips on in general?
I don't know. I think it's just because, as I said, for 10 years I've been a grassroots activist, and I know so many groups, I know so many communities, and for some, and apparently by working very hard to make sure that all these groups thrived, they had the faith in me to represent them now. And that's a really awesome feeling. It was very unexpected as well, and a bit of a shock. But I'm super, super grateful for the opportunity they gave me to represent them and to try to fight for a better Europe.
It seems like they made a good choice.
Thank you.
All right. So I think one of the last questions on the list we had is, I think there's a bit of a relation in our party and the whole country of Netherlands in how it is perceived by a casual observer.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you're not that much into politics and you've heard a few things about the progressives, then you might have heard it's the party that has, the gays in it. It's the party that does LGBT plus agenda. And, it's the party that wants to decriminalize marijuana.
Oh,
yeah.
Scandalous.
So coming from Netherlands, that's kind of also the casual observation about, what someone might have about your country.
Yep.
So how is it really, and how is it to grow up in a more progressive society? Will the things we want to do ruin everyone's life, is what I'm basically asking.
Obviously. Not. Well, I think, I'm a part of the queer community myself. So when we're talking about that aspect, I think I was 10 or 11 when marriage between same-sex couples became legal. We were the first country in the world. And I remember that this was on TV. Yeah. It's still pretty clear in my head, like the image. And I think for me, it wasn't even the fact that 2 men and 2 women were getting married, but that there were several couples at the same time getting married. I think that's why I was like, "Mommy, what's going on? I don't understand this." But she also just explained it in a super chill way, like, "Oh yeah, they're in love. They were never allowed to get married, and now they are." And it's like, yay, because it's love, and that's fine. And I think then when at some point I came out to my mom and was like, "Yeah, I think I'm kind of in love with a girl," I still remember so vividly that the first question she asked me was not, something. She wasn't shocked. She sort of saw it coming. But her question was, "Will you then still get married in a dress?" And I mean, of course, this is also a bit of a stereotype, etc. But just the fact that she didn't have worries that I wouldn't be able to express and celebrate my love. That's the first thing she thought about, actually, that I could celebrate my love. And that she hoped that it would still be in a dress because it was always her dream to go dress shopping with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the LGBT side, and of course there's still many issues, and there's still a lot of conservatism, but we have embraced the fact that we are a positive society for LGBT people. Sometimes that's also why we're forgetting a little bit that we still have to fight for these issues.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm very happy to at least have these basic rights, like maybe I'm not always protected by society, but at least I'm protected by the law. And I think that's something very reassuring. When it comes about marijuana, yes, of course, that's all we do. We smoke. Yeah, no, that's really the image there is. And I think the funniest thing for me was when I started studying at a very international university, was shocked how much the people who were not Dutch smoked, actually.
Yeah.
Because it's, if it's something that is not really allowed, I think so much more exciting to do it. I think the people that are curious might try it at some point when they turn 18 because it's legal to buy it in a shop. And then they're like, okay, is this what all these tourists are coming for? Yeah, it's fun, but I'm not seeing, like the answer to the universe. Okay, and that's it.
Trying it in a shop when someone is 18 and not being that impressed by it. Like, is that a personal story? Or are you mentioning a friend of yours?
It's not a personal story.
Okay.
But I know that that's the case for most people.
Yeah, because the Stoltenberg had done it. He had smoked. He had admitted to everything. So we have high-profile people that have engaged in this. But I also remember some statistics that Dutch people actually smoke quite a bit less than overall Europeans. I also remember in dorms the warnings that we had that, hey, because it's illegal here, our stuff is a lot stronger than what you're used to in your country.
Yeah.
But I think that has also, equalized a bit with cohesion funds. But there's always going to be people that want to do it, right? So it's just about doing it in a safe way.
Yeah, exactly. And, if you go to a coffee shop, then there's a whole list, and it will also, explain, like, what the effect will be. Will it make you sleepy? Will it make you happy? Everything, And the people behind the bar are sometimes, when they're not just tourist coffee shops, even willing to explain to you how it's going to affect you. So I think it's a much safer way. And also, it's not like, alcohol is such a, common thing. And actually, when you're saying you're not drinking, people are looking at you like, why are you not drinking? But alcohol is actually damaging society a lot. Like there's a lot of people tend to get very aggressive when they drink too much, for example. Whereas I've never seen a stoner getting aggressive. So I also don't really understand why there's this huge fear. I mean, that being said, it's still very unhealthy, but alcohol is too.
Yeah, we had a sad thing earlier in June, I believe, that kind of combined these two things in that our parliament voted down the civil partnership proposal. So one that
very sad.
Yeah, extend to LGBT people as well.
Yeah.
In the same day, they also lowered the excise tax for alcohol. So because of the lobby and because, the idea is that that's how we get more people from the Baltic states to come and give us money for cheap booze.
Oh, yeah.
But, we have a bit of a way to go in both these things.
Then you can better decriminalize marijuana because then they will all come for that. That's what we see in the Netherlands. I'm from the border community, and there are so many people coming always.
Yeah.
Just for that.
Speaking of that, then I also would be remiss if I wouldn't invite you to the next Baltic Pride.
I would love to. When is it?
Yeah, there's a bit of a rotation. So next year, I think it's in Estonia, and the year after, in 2021, it will be back in Riga again.
Cool.
So let's do the LGBT conspiracy thing in Riga.
Yes, love to. And also, there's something that people sometimes don't understand, but inviting an MEP to events that might cause aggression really helps, because there's always police that wants to protect the MEP and they don't want to look bad when an MEP gets harmed.
Yeah.
So I also joined, for example, a big climate protest in Germany of civil disobedience, and I was there to support the protesters and make sure that they would get food and water. And this is something that MEPs also do when it comes to LGBT rights. When there is a pride in danger of being attacked and that needs police security, for example, this summer in Poland, then there was I think there were 200 police people per MEP. So in case I'm just going for the LGBT party, of course, if I come here for the pride, but in case you need us to support you when things are not going that well on LGBT rights, then you should invite us.
Yeah, I'll try to do everything I can to get you a photo with our excellent drag queen performers.
Yay!
All that stuff.
I love drag queens. And maybe you can also ask them if they want to teach me how to be the perfect drag queen, because I would love to.
Well, a drag queen. We're a bit lacking in drag kings as well.
Oh, so also happy to do that.
Yeah, I hope that's a big thing that we can do.
It's actually growing finally in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
The last Pride, there were suddenly, because we always have the drag Olympics, which is like handbag throwing and things like that. And finally there were a lot of drag kings, and it made the whole event so much more colorful and diverse. It was really, really beautiful.
Yeah. There's something I love about being able to talk to a member of European Parliament about drag queens and the culture and so. And but you also referred to something that there's this important activist position that you're still able to do while being a member of Parliament, right? Yeah. Because it's essentially like a kind of a body shield function, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's an important one. I think that's one of the ways you can pick out the representatives that care and those that
you have to have guts as well. Like if you're in the front line of a tear gas then
well, vote for the politicians that have seen police brutality.
Maybe.
Okay, I think that's most of the things we wanted to talk about for now.
Cool, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for being here. And you will have to tell the hippo joke.
Yes. Okay. Have to. Okay. My best joke ever. So, why do you never see hippopotamus hiding in trees?
I don't know. Why don't you?
Because they're really good at it. You're laughing again. You see, it is actually a good joke. It just feels ridiculous.
Yeah, I have bad memory. So are you brave enough to do the bike joke as well?
Yes.
It's a very Dutch thing to finish on.
So why did the bicycle fall down?
Why did it fall down?
Because it's too tired.
Oh, no.
Okay, cringe.
Yeah.
And I also sometimes say very smart things. Follow me on social media when I don't make these kind of jokes, but say how I'm going to change the world.
Yeah, like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah, something like that.
All right. We'll try. We'll try. Okay, that's for the informal part. Maybe you have something inspirational that we can finish with. Perhaps a wish for the progressives for Latvia.
My wish for the progressives in Latvia is that you continue growing, that you can expand your base, and that you will make Latvia a more socially just place by creating a more sustainable Latvia.
That's good. I missed the hippo joke, but...
And this joke will become your national pride.
Yes. It will be a meme by the time you return.
Oh, I really hope this. Or maybe you should make a hippo your logo.
Well, we talked about how dangerous they are before,
actually,
right?
Yeah, so
I think we need a more neutral kind of animal.
Okay. But yes.
Well, we're going to put the hippo in our logo, but I'm afraid you're not going to see it.
Oh yes, just very small. In that stripe on the.
No, he's going to
be hidden. Yeah, behind that stripe on top of the E. I'm sure.
We can do the thing that we've done with Reinis now, like one of our national poets and novelists. So we can give him like a unicorn horn. So it can be like a hippo horn.
Yes.
Or uni-hippo, yeah.
The uni-hippo.
Maybe that's copyrighted somewhere, but the Consumer Protection Commission is working on it.
Yes. I will do my utmost best to make sure this can happen.
All right. So we have finished with multiple ridiculous things, but thank you, seriously,
because politics
for
is
being
not
here.
only serious, but also fun.
Yeah. Don't let memes be dreams, you know.
Exactly.
Put them to life.
Yes.
Okay. I think that's it. We will let you do some serious social networking now.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. And yeah, follow our green and red policies. I think that's all. Have a nice evening, you all. Thank you
Bye.
once again.